Welcome to another episode of CrossTalk. Of course, it is the 6th Plymouth edition with the one and only.
You've done better. You've done better. It wasn't your strongest.
I didn't know I was being graded on a curve here, but
Okay.
we're here with State Representative Josh Cutler, who represents the 6th Plymouth District, which so happens to be Hanson, Pembroke, and Duxbury.
You got it.
I got that.
You got that part.
It was good. All right.
Well, we've been doing the show for about 3 years now, but that's all right.
And we definitely appreciate it, and I know residents appreciate you coming in.
I enjoy it too.
On a regular basis and kind of talking about some of the things that you're working on, whether it's up at the State House or within the district. I would think that maybe the first thing you want to kind of talk about, seeing that Governor Charlie Baker has put forth his budget,
Yes.
I think next up in the budget process,
We're up.
the folks in the House.
We're in the on-deck circle, so to speak. Yeah, that's right. Because our last episode was with we had an esteemed guest, State Auditor Suzanne Bump. So we had a little bit of a different conversation. Didn't get to the typical topics, which
you
was
and I
kind of nice.
You and I kind of co-hosted it.
Yeah, I could do that. Maybe after this gig's up, I'll think about getting into that line of
You
work.
should do it anyone. We'd love to have you do your
That's
own
right. Senator
show.
Headland, was well known for having his own
thing.
show. Yeah. I don't think I could compete with him, but so we're getting into budget season. We're already in budget season. Governor Baker came out with his budget last month, and now the House and Senate Ways and Means committees are having a series of hearings around the state to hear from different folks on the various policy items that are the major portions of our budget.
Sure.
And so we're starting to get prepared and having our meetings with the members of Ways and Means and preparing our requests, and then we'll dive into sort of budget season at the House as we have an opportunity to try to shape the budget and push for our own priorities, local priorities, but also on a regional and statewide basis. And so it's a busy time of year. It's kind of an exciting time of year because there's a lot of important issues going on, and we want to have a voice and try to make sure we're advocating as best as we can for our community. So I look forward to it.
How is this different? How is it this is the second budget under this administration, and this will be your fourth one. How have they varied from the different administrations to? We look at the situation that the current governor was in during last year. I mean, we were up to snow. That was
right. So last year was a little bit of an anomaly because having a new governor, typically the governor will come out with the budget, in January.
Right.
And
he gets an extension.
He gets an extension. You get a pass because you're a new governor, which is appropriate. You get a little bit of time to figure out things that are going on. So that was a little bit different, but typically, the budget process starts a little bit earlier. So this year, because it's second time around, we're back to the typical schedule. And I would say, I'd say it's gone very smoothly so far. I mean, Governor Baker's, been easy to work with. He's a bipartisan kind of guy. I'm a bipartisan kind of guy, and so, it's been all good.
When you look at this budget, though, and compare it to last year's budget, do we see things? Do we see issues with dipping into the stabilization fund, no new taxes, and of course the one thing that everybody cares about is local aid?
Local aid, yes. So I think most as far as taxes and fees and stuff, the House Speaker and the Governor are all on the same page, and I think really said from the outset that we weren't going to be considering new taxes or raising fees in this budget cycle, which is the same. It's been the last 3 years actually. So that was welcome news, I think. As far as local aid goes, that's the big push every year. One of the things that we've been working on, we were chatting off camera about a recent visit that Rep. Deal and I had and Senator Brady to the Whitman-Hanson School Committee meeting to try to talk about Chapter 70, which is the way that we fund. It was one of the major sources of local aid, the other being what's called UGA, Unrestricted General Government Aid. It used to be kind of known as lottery aid. And those are the two big ways that we send money back to our cities and towns, Chapter 70 and Unrestricted General Government Aid. So we're always trying to sort of tinker with the way the formulas are allocated so that we can maximize what comes back to our towns. And not to bore your viewers, but there's one particular area of the formula, that Chapter 70 formula, that we've been really trying to push and push back on, which is what's called the minimum per pupil increment. Communities like Whitman-Hanson or Pembroke or Duxbury, all the communities that I represent, and a lot of suburban communities as well, because of the way our foundation budgets formula is set up, and because our enrollments tend to be fairly flat, we're not having huge spikes of new students coming in. Our foundation aid doesn't go up very much every year. And so school districts, and that's the majority of school districts, is probably 200 plus school districts across the state that are in the same boat as we are, only get a minimum per pupil increase every year. And In the past couple of years, that's been set at $25 per pupil. So basically, it's sort of like a cost of living increase for our schools. It's not the same term, but that sort of gives an idea. It's to provide at least a minimum increase, even though by the formula they may not necessarily qualify for an increase. Because as we know, even if you have the same number of students, your costs go up every year. Contractual costs, healthcare costs, you name it. Even just to have a level service budget, you need an increase every year. So we've been trying to boost that number, and the administration came out with a budget that had a lower figure, $20 per pupil. So we're trying to get that pushed back up, at least to 25, actually higher than that. We sent a letter asking for 50, because you might as well aim a little higher.
Sure.
So again, this gets kind of into the weeds, and it gets into the formulas and calculations and stuff, and I'm sure we've lost some ratings points since I started talking about this.
No, but it's
people
important.
Care. It's important.
People
it's very
care.
important. And they do care, and credit to our school committee members and school officials. They're very passionate about this, and they've been very persistent in terms of coming to us and trying to push us to do everything we can to get these numbers back up. And so we have been responding and responsive. And I recently submitted a letter, and I was proud to be the author of, requesting this increase in the per pupil minimum increment. And I got 73 other colleagues in the House and Senate of both parties to sign on. So we submitted a letter with 74, myself included, members to the budget makers asking for an increase in this per pupil minimum per pupil increment. So it's something that is important. Obviously, our whole delegation was supportive of it. Senator Brady, our new senator, and also Representative Deal, we're all on the same page here. And so we're trying to, I'm optimistic we'll see some increase. I don't necessarily, think we're going to get everything we asked for. You never do, but I'm optimistic we'll see at least some increase. So.
Well, yeah, right now what's happening up at the State House is laying the groundwork for what will happen during the town meetings. Those communities that practice the town meeting form of government, or if you have somebody who's a mayor, although they'll put forth.
I have all town meetings in my towns, no mayors.
So you're fortunate. So it's going to be interesting this year when it comes to town meeting, to say the least.
Yes, in fact, one of the communities I represent, Duxbury, has its town meeting later this month. Has one of the earliest town meetings in the state. So it's. But
there actually is there a petition or a push to push it back?
There is, and in fact, they're voting at this town meeting whether or not to make it a later town meeting. So they're potentially putting it back to April or even May. I'll be attending town meeting and learning more and finding out. It's may not always be the case, but yes. So my towns are nicely set up. I have Duxbury in March, and then April is Pembroke, and then in May is Hanson. So. Works out well.
Okay. So it'll definitely be something that'll be worth watching. Yep. During budget season, it also is that time where you get to file bills or amendments or co-sponsor things. And I believe one of the things that we were talking about is that you get a bill that you're putting forth in regards to a suggestion from a Hanson resident, if you will.
Sure. So, just to back up a second, during the budget season, we'll obviously have a lot of amendments we'll be filing. Some of them will be local priorities, things we might try to be doing here in Hanson or Pembroke or Duxbury, and some of them may be on a county basis. For instance, we've been trying to get funding to fight Lyme disease for Plymouth County. We've also been trying to get funding for a regional opiate addiction, a Plymouth County substance abuse organization. So a lot of different things like that they'll be trying to push forward. Also, the typical things, local aid, transportation dollars, those kinds of things. But as you mentioned, so that was the bill that you mentioned was actually something that we filed earlier this session that was at the suggestion of a Hanson resident, actually, who came to us. And basically, the issue is for individuals who are on the autism spectrum, when they're pulled over or might be stopped by police for whatever reason, and they produce their driver's licenses, because people who are on the autism spectrum, some of them can have communications issues.
Right.
So you can have miscommunication when you have someone who pulls someone over and looks at their driver's license and maybe starts asking questions, and if they don't communicate in the way they're expected right away, it could be misinterpreted. And so the idea is to have people voluntarily be able to put an optional designation, a symbol essentially, on their driver's license, so that if they are stopped or just have to give their license for whatever reason, doesn't always mean it's being stopped, the other person on the other end of the line will know, okay, this person is on the autism spectrum, and just factor that into their communication, that maybe they have a different way of communicating and aren't as comfortable,
Correct.
As someone else might be. And that's not to say, that just applies to some folks, but it can be an important, and it can be a way to head off potentially much larger issues. Miscommunication can lead to other things. So it was a great idea, I thought, at no cost. People can put an optional symbol on their driver's license to let people know they're on the autism spectrum.
Like if you're an organ donor, there's a symbol.
Exactly.
So why not the same thing for this?
That's exactly what the model we've been talking about. We've been talking to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, and they're generally supportive of it. There's some logistical issues that have to be worked out, like literally having space on the license to do it, what the symbol would be, a lot of those kind of logistical questions, and how we get the word out, things like that. So it's something we're still working on, and still have some ways to go. But I thought it was a good example of how a regular citizen can come forward, and it wasn't my idea. I won't take credit for it. We're working on it, but it was a Hanson resident who came forward and brought it to our attention, and it's a great idea, and it's something that could benefit people all over the state of Massachusetts, and so I think it's a good example of how citizens can be active participants in making government more effective and more working better for them. So. Hopefully someone out there will be listening and hear that story.
Maybe they have an idea.
And have an idea and give me a shout, and we'll see what happens.
The one thing that's been a top conversation in the news locally, and that is an opiate bill that was put forth. I know the governor was part of it. I know that the House is trying to put something forth. Where do things stand with that? Has that not moved forward to a certain point?
Yeah, I look forward to the day where I come on your show and we don't have to talk about opiates, because it seems like every single show we've had to talk about this. It's unfortunate. There are a lot of steps that have been taken by the legislature and the governor in the past to try to address this, and we continue to do so. This year, Governor Baker filed an opiate bill, and the House passed a bill earlier just this year. And this particular piece of legislation was narrowly focused on prescription drugs in particular, because we see a lot of abuse of prescription drugs. We see overprescription, where people are getting prescribed 30 days of OxyContin for a minor broken bone, perhaps, just for sake of example.
Sure.
And may only need it for a few days, and then they're left with this big bottle, and what happens with it. And that causes all kinds of ripple effects, whether they leave it in their home, and a younger person may get a hold of it. Yep. We've had people breaking into homes, people breaking into during open houses for realtors, stealing drugs. All different kinds of things can happen because of that. And so we're trying to sort of rein that in a little bit, while still being respectful of the folks, that people have chronic pain and chronic issues, where their opiates are a lifesaver for them, to understand and appreciate their point of view. So the legislation restricts first-time prescriptions to 7 days supply or less. So if you are someone who's getting a new prescription, the most you would get for the first subscription is 7 days. If you're someone who's a repetitive user who's got a chronic pain issue, that wouldn't be the case. But for that first time, and that will help to cut down, we think, on the overprescription of opiates. So that's part of it. Part of it has to do with hospitalization stays and making sure that people who come in for an opiate or an overdose get some kind of evaluation before they're discharged. So it's a good bill, and it's currently in conference committee. The Senate passed a similar bill, and we're that sort of old step in the process where the two sides
iron out the details.
Are working, just like your Saturday morning cartoon where you learn about the bill, it becomes a law. We're at that part of the conversation.
Only a bill.
Right, the conference committee. So it's going to get done.
That stage.
It's going to get done. It's just a question of making sure that the two bills are complementary, and I suspect it'll be done within the next couple months, and certainly before the end of the fiscal year, which will be July 31st.
If your constituents haven't figured it out by now, you're a guy who likes to, if you're not doing your work up on the Hill, you like to be doing things, creative things, informative things. One of them, most recently, you had the chair of the Elder Affairs at, was it the Hanson Senior Center?
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
We like to do lots of events. So we had the chairwoman of the Committee on Elder Affairs come down to Hanson at my request, and we did a nice program over at the Hanson Senior Center with Mary Collins, a wonderful director we have here in Hanson.
Sure.
And that was great. We had a really good crowd. I think we had about 70 people. We had a little luncheon and then opportunity for seniors, not just in Hanson, but we opened it up to anybody in the South Shore area. It was primarily Hanson and Pembroke and some folks from maybe Halifax and Whitman as well, to talk about some of the issues that seniors are facing. And we collected some data, and Chairwoman Garlick is kind of going around the state and doing similar events like this, and we're putting all the data together so we can kind of get a better picture of some of the needs policy-wise, that our seniors are facing, what we can do to do a better job of serving their needs. And so it was a great event, and I was really pleased to see the turnout and that she was able to come. And I think people appreciated a chance to speak to someone who's a decision maker and really can influence policy in that area.
What seemed to be some of the frequently asked questions that either you were glad they were asked or were surprised and didn't realize that that was an issue?
Sure. Well, it was a lot of questions about Medicare, Social Security. One thing, actually, this is a good segue, was about taxes and property taxes and the whole burden that we face, and particularly falls on our senior population. And one of the things that came up, and it led to another event that I just had, was what's called the circuit breaker tax credit, which some people may be familiar with, which is a tax credit here in Massachusetts for people 65 or older. There's certain income eligibility qualifications. And it's a way for people who do have maybe a fairly high property tax burden and a lower income to offset that, and they can actually get a credit cash back from the Commonwealth after filing their taxes. So that was something we talked about, and because people had a lot of questions about taxes and how can we reduce the burden, what are some of the abatements and credits that we can qualify for. And so one of the things that came out of that meeting was that we should maybe do a better job informing people about the circuit breaker tax credit. So that's what we did. In fact, we moved it over to Pembroke, and we had an event just to rotate among the towns I represent. We had someone from the Department of Revenue come down and do a forum on the circuit breaker tax credit, and that was earlier this month, last month, at the Pembroke Council on Aging with our wonderful new Pembroke Council on Aging Director, Anna Siri, who's now just finishing up her first year on the job. And that was great as well. We had a full house of folks trying to learn more about this tax credit, and people can still, it's not too late to apply for this year. If you haven't filed your taxes already, my website has a lot more information about this. I don't want to bore everybody again with all the details, but there's certain eligibility guidelines. If your income is below a certain amount,
sure,
and your property taxes are above a certain amount, then you could be eligible.
And if I can ask a question, because I know some communities differ. And you're talking about state level. You're not talking
this
as
is
far
a state
as
level.
State level, okay.
It applies across the state.
Okay, because I know with certain communities, if you wanted to get a tax break as well, there's like a trade-off with doing volunteer work, and just to make sure folks aren't confused.
So that's an above and beyond this.
This is right. This is different. This is what the representative's talking about on the state level to get tax breaks.
Right. Absolutely. Great point, Kevin. Yeah. So a number of communities around here have the senior work-off program where you can work for the town and get money back off your property taxes, or just have abatements if you are disabled or veteran or widowed. There's all different kinds of abatements you can apply for, and for those you want to go to your assessor's office at local town hall. So Hanson Town Hall, talk to the Lee Gamache there, or Kathy Salmon over in Pembroke, and they can tell you all about the different programs that would be available for your local property taxes. This is a state program, and it's independent of that.
Okay, definitely something to keep in mind, and kind of keep in with the same theme of things that you do in your district. A recent solar panel forum, very, very interesting, because we, as I've said to you a couple of times, is that we do have a volunteer here at Whitman Hanson Community Access who comes in and does a show on different things. Marianne Damasio, who comes in here.
Marianne, yeah.
And Marianne is already...
Green Hanson, they do great stuff.
She does an awesome job. She's already done 2 shows in regards to solar. So when I heard that you were doing one, I was like, this is fantastic. I've had the chance to watch her in action and speak to residents and stuff. To see you organize and then moderate it, what was that like?
So that was great. So, by the way, before I get to that, I was just driving in here this morning. I was thinking, you could get some panels. You got a nice southerly roof here, I think, at the studio here. You could get some panels on the top of that.
Something we might have
to talk to about that?
We'll have to talk to the executive director.
Who's the executive director? The guy out there behind
yeah,
the camera?
Yeah, the guy, who's directing the show.
But anyway, so we had a great event over in Duxbury. It was co-sponsored by Sustainable Duxbury, which is a similar group to Green Hanson and the Duxbury Free Library. And it was cool because they brought in 3 residents who have solar panels on their roofs, and they brought in 2 experts, one fellow who actually from the state, the Mass Clean Energy Center, and another guy who works for a company called Energy Sage, which is like an online solar marketplace where you can actually put in your information, and it will have solar installers, quote you and offer quotes, and you can see different competing quotes and see what the different terms are. And so it's kind of a neat way to look at it. So it was a great forum. We had a good turnout, and the residents all had different stories. One person had put them on the roof. Another person didn't have a roof that really worked, so they put them in their yard and actually built a little frame and was able to do it
like
that
their
way.
own little solar farm?
Yeah, small. But yeah, we talked about, you kind of save two ways with solar, because you save by the net metering, which is a way to reduce your electric bill, and sometimes to zero. And you can also save what's called SRECs, which are these solar renewable energy credits, which are traded in the marketplace, and the utility companies are required to buy a certain number of SRECs. And so some people actually will get a check in the mail every once in a while for their SRECs. So it's it can be really beneficial, and it depends on how you choose to finance it. Some people will buy the panels and have them installed. Some people will go to a company that does it all, that pays for everything, and then they get a cut of the savings. There are some low-interest loan programs that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts now offers. So if you want to finance it on your own and get a low-interest loan, you can do that. The federal government has a federal tax credit where you can save about a third of the cost on your federal taxes. The state of Massachusetts has a tax credit you can save $1,000 off. And there's a lot of deductions and tax credits, a lot of incentives for solar to make it work. And that's one of the things, just to sort of segue again, that we're grappling with at the policy level at the State House right now, is it's time to renew a lot of our solar programs. And we have what's called the net metering cap in some areas where we're bumping up against the cap. And so we need to raise the cap to allow more solar to occur. And so we're having a debate about what the best way to do that is, and how do we sort of slowly reduce the incentives so that solar is continuing to be a viable, flourishing industry, which it's really become in Massachusetts. I think we're one of the top 2 or 3 states in the nation in terms of solar industry, which is great. And even right here in Pembroke, we have a solar city. Not to name drop one particular company, because there's a lot of good ones out there.
Yep.
But they opened up a big headquarters in Pembroke and created 60 new jobs in the last couple of years. So.
Yep. We actually, Marianne had a member of Solar City here and was talking, and it's incredible that driving around, the more and more you drive around, the more solar panels you're starting to see around the South Shore, not just in Whitman, Hanson, or Pembroke, or Duxbury, but you're seeing them all over the place.
Yeah, just driving here. Yeah, it's Oliver, you're right, absolutely. And they're small and they fit on people's roofs, and think about you're saving money and putting more money in your wallet, and hey, you're also generating energy, that doesn't rely on fossil fuels or Middle East or any all the things that go along with more typical energy sources, and not to mention. We have a Pilgrim nuclear power plant, which is
going to be going offline in a couple of years,
in the next year to 2 years, and so we have to replace that energy as well, which obviously is not going to be replaced by solar panels overnight, but it's part of the solution.
I will tell you, from being kind of a little bit of an insider, I know that ISO New England recently held one of their auctions, and this was for the coming years, 2019, 2020. And it seems as though they have found that there are some viable plants and resources that are coming online to kind of help take over with retirement of things like Plymouth, the Pilgrim nuclear power plant, to be able to,
It's a big deal because, I think, you can correct me, Mr. Insider, but I think about 600 megawatts is the annual name capacity of Pilgrim, and so we're going to be losing that. Yeah. Not to mention Brayton Point, which is a coal plant, which is going offline. So I think this is the other big thing we've been dealing with from a policy point of view in terms of energy at the State House, because I'm on the Energy Committee, is trying to figure out where we're going to go to replace that. And the governor has recommended we pursue hydro primarily from Canada, which is something that I think is going to happen. The details of that are still being worked out, but I think we're going to see hydropower from Quebec as a major part of our energy. The governor used the word combo platter, which I think is a good analogy because it's a combo platter. We want
it makes me hungry.
Hydro-Quebec, natural gas, some renewables, maybe some offshore wind.
A nice mix.
A mix, with hydro being a big part of that. So that's, I think, something we're going to see happening later this session as well. A major energy bill dealing with trying to replace some of the energy we're going to lose because of Pilgrim and Brayton Point.
We got less than 5 minutes left. I want to make sure that we have a moment to talk about Katra. I believe Katra is going to be coming to Pembroke.
Yeah, so Katra, those buses you see, I think the acronym is Greater Attleboro Transit Authority. Yeah, something. There's an R in there. Regional Authority.
Regional Authority.
So the Katra buses, Katra service is something that Pembroke has and is expanding. Pleased to announce. Later this spring, Katra is going to be running a new route in Pembroke, and basically it's going to go. It's going to stop along most of the senior housing areas in Pembroke. It's going to stop at the senior center, right in Pembroke Center. It's going to go into North Pembroke Plaza, where the Coles is, and where all the commerce is there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then it's going to hook up with the Marshfield Duxbury line and be able to take folks up to the Hanover Mall, or if they wanted to switch, they could go down south to the Kingston Mall. So it'll be a good way to get folks, and not just seniors, but primarily a lot of seniors, to plug into the transportation network and be able to get out of their house and do things, whether it's go to a medical appointment or go to a restaurant and just get your hair done, or whatever the things that you want to do to get out of the house. So that's going to be coming, something we've been working on. The Pembroke town officials have done a great job. Ed Thorne and our selectman in Pembroke, and Anna Siri, the Pembroke Council on Aging director, all working together on this. Just went to a meeting yesterday, in fact, on this. And they're slated for April, probably end of April, to come out. They'll be announcing the actual schedule and the exact route at that time. But it's going to be a nice welcome addition for some new transportation options for Pembroke, and maybe down the road we can try to get Hanson involved in that too. But,
okay.
So good step for Pembroke.
Less than 3 minutes left. Anything that we haven't had a chance to talk about, or if there's anything you just want to kind of share with the residents while we have a moment?
Jeez,
Now you get 2 minutes. So.
Now I have 2 minutes. No, I mean there's a ton of stuff going on. This is a busy time of year. And I just want to say I really enjoy the job, and it's really been a privilege and a privilege to serve for the last 3 years, and I look forward to. I'll be doing an official campaign announcement probably this fall, but I look forward to running for re-election, and I really love the job and love to continue doing it and serving the folks of this district. It's something I really. It's been my favorite part of my career, and I hope to do it a little bit longer. So.
What if folks want to find out what you're up to, whether it's social media wise or maybe even a website? How can they?
Sure. So yeah, if people need to reach me, you can reach me online, joshcutler.com, on Facebook at Josh Cutler. If they want to reach my cell phone, I always give it out to folks. It's 781-217-5854. If they want to reach me direct, you can call me up at the State House. I have my legislative aide, Rick Branca, who's actually a Hanson resident.
Does a great job.
Whitman Hanson graduate. And he's up there at the State House on a daily basis, even if I'm not up there, because I'm oftentimes here in the district. So people can reach out if they need help, whether it's about a particular policy item or an issue, or if they just need help with a constituent matter. It's sort of navigating state government. We're there to help. We're a resource for folks, and nobody should feel shy about reaching out. So.
I'm reaching out to say thank you.
Whoa, look at that segue.
Coming in.
Nicely done, sir.
Coming in, and that's it. That's it for the 6th Plymouth District edition of CrossTalk with Josh Cutler. Until next time, have a great day.